Which of the following would not be considered real property? Is it a house, a bearing wall, fixtures, or leasehold estates? Which one of these would not be real property? What do you guys think on this one?
All right, we got some D's coming in. Oh, Jane even said leasehold. Yes, that is correct. Because we know a leasehold estate is a lease.
Mm.
It's not real property. You may be leasing the real property, but the estate in and of itself is an intangible thing because it's a right. So the gross rent multiplier is, I'm going to take it this way. It tells you exactly what it is. You have gross rent, and then you have this number that is a gross rent multiplier. Take your gross rent, multiply it by the multiplier, and what you find is value, right? So if you are trying to find value and you're appraiser, and it's not 50 units, it's not 30 units, it's not even 20 units, you just want to just find the value based off of income with a smaller number of units, you're going to use the GRM, the gross rent multiplier. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of show you what I mean by the gross rent multiplier. So if you want to know value, one way you could do it would be if you have the NOI and you divide it by the cap rate, you get value. This is the income approach. That's one option. But another option, if you want to find value, is take the gross rent and multiply it by that gross rent multiplier. Now, this is where I'm going to say something that a lot of you all are not going to want to hear, but it's the truth. Some states use gross rent multiplier and gross income multiplier interchangeably.
Including mine, which is why it's always confusing to me when people ask me questions about that.
But some states, like I was helping somebody the other day, was that yesterday, day before? I don't know what it was. In some states, this is considered monthly and income is considered annual. And in some states, they say this is annual. And then they say this is annual minus expenses. There is no one what is gross rent multiplier, or sorry, I should explain this. It's not the multiplier that they're looking at. It's not this that they're saying is annual. It's really this. They're looking at the gross rents. Are we looking for gross rents monthly? Are we looking for gross rents annually? And if we do call it gross rents annually, then all of a sudden we're calling it the income. And in some states, if you're doing it annually, they want you to take out expenses. This is what I tell people. You need to look at your textbook, wherever you took your pre-licensing class. Go to that particular, like somebody who wrote a course for your state. Go to see what they gave as the gross rent multiplier formula.
Yep.
Because
I was always taught
annual.
annual.
See, and I've always, from the beginning, I've always been taught, like in my state, there is a difference between gross rent multiplier and gross income multiplier. So it's not really a definite answer that we can give you guys. It's just, it is what it is, unfortunately.
And that's why I wanted to pull this one up. I put it in the chat. The question that Jane had, which was a good one, is from our question of the day in PrepAgent. It was like, the gross rent multiplier is calculated by dividing the monthly or annual gross rent into the selling price of the property. So that's the question. What Kandyce just said is important, because that's why I didn't want to type it up in an email and respond it. I wanted to do it live because that is the weirdness of it. That is true.
In the definition, it says monthly or annually.
Right.
So that's why you're confused. It's not because it's you.
It's because the book is confused and we are all kind of confused. So
you know what else I feel that way about is when we talk about descriptions and land descriptions, there's the meets and bounds. And I Googled this for like 6 months. Some places will say meets are distance and directions and bounds are boundaries. Some things that you look up will say meets are distance and bounds are the directions. And I'm like, well, which one is it?
I was taught that bounds are boundaries.
Yeah. So it's in both ways in Google,
know.
like Google's the official. So what I tell my students is North Carolina, where I am, puts it in their manual is this. This is what I'm teaching you. But you might go to another state or another definition, maybe like on Quizlet or something, and you see it says something different. Different is not necessarily wrong. It's
Right.
kind of like the definition of a few. Some people might tell you that a few is 3. Some might tell you that a few is 4 or more. Just
Right.
depends on what part of the country you're in.
Yep. All right. So our next question is, so Jane, hopefully that kind of helped a little bit because that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it while we were all in here together. So
And Sarah
Oscar
said, wait,
Andrew.
one more
Oh,
thing. Sarah said something else that was important. Sarah, yes, in some states,
yep.
the GIM is used for commercial. And that actually, like you're in Texas, that applies to me in my state. We don't necessarily say commercial, but we say, hey, if it's 1 to 4 units, use GRM. If it's 5 or more units, you use GIM. So 1 to 4 GR, because R, 1 to 4 units, is residential. So you're absolutely right. In some states, Sarah, that's where that defining line is. It just depends on what your state says about how you want your commission or Department of Real Estate wants you to look at it. End story. Now,
Just
go
like the
ahead.
appropriations with the 360-day or 365. What's your state say? And I always ask people, what did you learn in your class? Because sometimes they teach us 360 with a 30-day month with the statutory year, and sometimes they teach us
Well,
calendar year.
I can tell you again, and I'm always picking on North Carolina. For years, they told us it was only ever going to be 360. And then in the last year, they started switching it to 365 and not telling us as teachers.
Yeah.
So I tell people, know how to do it both ways.
Yeah. But in Ohio,
Know
we
how
do
to do it both ways.
365. Yeah. So Oscar, Andrew, and Douglas are joint tenants owning a parcel of land. Douglas conveys his interest to his longtime friend Joe. After the conveyance, Oscar and Andrew do what? Become
Go to
tenants.
the bar. No,
What's
they
that?
don't go to, I said go
Oh,
to the bar.
I didn't hear you. Okay. Become tenants in common, continue to be joint tenants with Douglas, remain joint tenants owning a 2/3 interest, or become joint tenants with Joe. So remember what's important about joint tenancy. We have to start it at the same time. So Oscar, Andrew, and Douglas start out at the same time. They're joint tenants. And then Douglas flips the script and brings Joe in it. So Oscar and Andrew started at the same time. They continue to be joint tenants, right? They continue to be joint tenants. So remain joint tenants owning a 2/3 interest is the correct answer here. Because they would stay as the joint tenancy. The new guy that jumped in with them, Joe, he joins as a tenant in common. All right. So Kandyce, next up.
Personal property includes all of the following except chattels, emblements, fructus industrials, or fixtures.
I picked that.
Which one is not personal property?
I think C is a funny word. I like it.
Fructus industrials and naturalis industrialis.
Fixtures. There you go.
It's fixtures because remember the definition of a fixture is something that was personal property that gets permanently attached to the real property and now it transfers with the real property.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. Fructus industrialis is like the profit from crops that are
Yep.
grown.
It's crops. You can call them fruits of industry. It's crops.
Yeah.
And that comes into play.
One, right?
Yeah. It comes into play in rented farmlands.
Yeah. Like doctrine of implements and all that stuff. A landlord sold an apartment building so that a freeway can be built. The tenant's lease has expired, but the landlord permits him to stay in the apartment until the building is torn down. Here's the important part. The tenant continues to pay the rent as prescribed in the lease. What kind of tenancy does the tenant have? He's paying rent. Is it tenancy at sufferance, tenancy at will, periodic tenancy, or holdover tenancy? This one's tricky. Ooh, I'm tricking him. So he's still paying rent. So it's periodic tenancy. If it was tenancy at will, he would be allowed to stay without paying rent. But he's paying the rent. So it's periodic tenancy. He's on a month-to-month now, right? So a lot of people notice that. Good job,
Well, I
guys.
think a lot of people before this class don't realize if he's paying rent and the landlord is accepting it, it's almost like an implied contract. It is not, but it's similar to an implied contract where, you know what, if you keep taking my rent, even though you're telling me I'm not supposed to be here, then it sounds like I am supposed to be here because you took my money and
Mhm,
for allowing me to be here. So that is an actual type of tenancy. By
mhm.
accepting my money, landlord, you are saying I could be here. So that is why.
What if the building is torn down before the month is up? That's a good question, Susie. Then he would probably have to refund the guy part of the rent, I
Yeah,
would think.
that's a call an attorney.
Yeah.
So a tenancy at will is no payment? No, it
Okay.
doesn't have to be a tenancy at will for no payment. Somebody could pay you. It just so happened in that those answer choices, that was the best answer choice.
Yeah, usually tenancy at will, we're not paying rent. It's like you're agreeing. But if you're not paying rent and you're supposed to be, then that's tenancy at sufferance, right?
Mhm.
All right, next up, Miss Candace.
Under which of the following types of liens can both the real property and the personal property of the debtor be paid to pay the debt? Judgment lien, mechanics lien, real estate tax lien, or assessment lien? I'm seeing a lot of A's flowing up my screen, just blowing it up. A, and great. It is, in fact, a judgment lien. So good
Exactly.
job.
All right. Buyer Joe and seller Stephen both sign a purchase contract. What kind of title interest, if any, does Joe have in the property at this point? And he is signing a purchase contract. Is it equitable? None of these, defeasible or legal.
Mm. Lots of A's again.
Buyer Joe and seller Stephen both sign a purchase contract. What kind of title interest, if any, do they have? Equitable title, right? Because they're working towards the end product, right? If I have the deed in hand, then I have legal title. All right, next, Candace.
The owner of a condominium and the lessee of an apartment both have, is it an estate in real property, a fee interest, an estate of inheritance, or a less than freehold interest? What say you?
Owner of a condominium was. Ah,
We got an A, we got a D, we got an A, D, A, and it is A. It is A. So here's why the answer is not D. A less than freehold estate is a leasehold estate. And if you own a condominium, then you're not leasing, you own it. They both have estates. Both of those parties have the right to live there, which in fact is the definition of the word estate. An interest strong enough to give you, the person who has the interest, possession.
yeah. An estate in real property may exist along with other estates in the same property, can come into being only through a grant, will always run on into perpetuity, or must only carry the right to immediate possession.
Oh, I love this question. Do you know why I love this question? It's a great example of the fact that you can, the words matter, that words matter. So in this question, you'll see here that it says, and let me get to it, will always run into perpetuity, perpetuity, blah, 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 must
Yeah.
only carry the right to immediate possession.
Only. Oh,
May exist. There is a big difference between must and may, always and never, can and will. Can I, should
no.
I, and
May
can I are
I?
very different things. And that is why for this one, let's talk about it. Let's talk about why this is the answer. May you have two types of estates at the same time? Yes. Because
One
if
person
I
can
own a
agree.
property, I have a freehold and fee simple estate.
Mhm.
And if I decide to lease that property to Maria, she now has a non-freehold estate. Maybe I give her a periodic tenancy. We both have estates in the property. My ownership interest gives me the right to possess it, but I can give that right to possession to Maria through a non-freehold estate, that periodic tenancy.
Yep.
But you don't only get estates because of grants. Not all estates run forever.
Right.
Perpetuity means like forever. No, you don't get to live someplace in a lease forever. If it's a life estate, we definitely know it's not going forever. And it must only carry the immediate right of possession. No, doesn't have to be immediate. It doesn't, can't only be that. So sometimes going through your answer choices and deep breaking it down, deconstructing the questions and the answers can help you answer it.
A fee estate is a leasehold estate, an estate for years, a less than freehold estate, or an estate of inheritance. What it would be a fee estate? Fee simple, fee simple absolute, fee simple defeasible. Think of those fees. What do you guys think? One
We
of
got
these?
2Ds, 3Ds.
True. It's an
I said
estate of
3D.
inheritance, right? I can leave it to my heirs, right? It can be left on. It can go on. It's an indefinite in duration versus these other ones are types of leases. All right, Kandyce, last one. Here you go.
Regarding a fee simple title, which is not true. Oh, there's some words, keywords like always in here there again. Regarding fee simple title, which is not true. So 3 true, 1 false. It is transferable by will or intestate. B, it is transferable with or without consideration. C, it is always free of encumbrances. Or D, it is indefinite duration. And of course, it's C. Very good, guys. Very good.
Right. Because it's not always free of encumbrances. We could have liens on it. We could have easements. We could have all that stuff. Remember our encumbrances, liens, easements, encroachments. These are all things that hold me back.